Now, ultimately, we are God. That is our true self. It's not our ego mind. It's not Joseph's ally, right? That's the suit that God puts on, right? We are God's emanation.
You close your eyes and see it, your life exactly as you desire. The streets, the faces, the feeling of it all. You breathe it in as if it's already yours. Neville Goddard didn't wait for signs, for timing, for external proof. He tapped directly into the vivid inner world where reality is born. A thought becomes a feeling becomes a moment, and suddenly the impossible is happening. The method is simple, but the effect is undeniable. Instant shifts that ripple outward, unseen yet undeniable, until your reality rearranges itself around the imagination you dared to feel fully. The door to imagination. Reality feels solid. We move through it, certain of its weight, its rules, the way the world always seems to push back. But what if that solidity is only a story your senses tell you? Neville Goddard believed that the world you see, touch, and measure is just a reflection of what you imagine. Imagination is not a playground of idle thoughts. It is the very substance of life itself. To grasp this is to open a door you didn't even know existed. Vedanta philosophy calls the world Maya, the great illusion. What we perceive as fixed and unchanging is actually a projection shaped entirely by the mind. Mountains, rivers, faces, opportunities, they are mirrors of the inner state, not separate entities demanding our obedience. When your imagination shifts, even subtly, the reflection shifts. This is not wishful thinking. It is a reality grounded in perception. Cognitive science quietly echoes this idea. Studies on mental rehearsal show that athletes and performers improve not only by doing, but by vividly imagining themselves succeeding. The brain does not fully distinguish between real and deeply felt imagined experiences. Neurons fire, muscles prepare, confidence grows. What your mind can experience internally, your life can manifest externally. Imagine stepping into a world where thought precedes form. You're no longer a passenger reacting to circumstances. You're the silent artist shaping the canvas before it even appears. Neville's radical idea is deceptively simple. Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Feel it now, in the present, as if it already exists. The door to imagination opens wide when you realize that what you feel and believe internally is more powerful than what you see outside. The mind becomes a laboratory, a stage, a seedbed of reality. Every day, life conspires to keep us fixated on external events. The news, conversations, obligations, they insist that the world is solid and immutable. And yet, subtle shifts in attention, just a moment of imagining a different outcome, ripple outward. The invisible currents of thought and feeling begin to attract circumstances that reflect them. You may notice a stranger smiling at you in a way that feels like an answer, or an idea appearing that solves a problem you hadn't voiced. Small signs, almost imperceptible, hint that reality is malleable. It begins quietly, in the corners of perception, yet it is profoundly true. This is not magic in the way children imagine magic, wands and spells. It is a deep, mystical logic that requires both curiosity and courage. Fear often hides behind the door of imagination. To truly believe that what you imagine can exist requires surrendering habitual doubt, the invisible chains that tell you you are powerless. Yet once you take that first step, once you feel an imagined scene as real, something shifts. The mind opens, the heart responds, and the world outside, in subtle and sometimes sudden ways, mirrors that inner state. Consider the practice as a dialogue rather than a command. You do not force the world, you invite it. Imagination is not coercion. It is participation in a living dynamic flow. In this space, thought and feeling intertwine, crafting a reality that seems to obey, almost instantly, the internal laws you have aligned with. The evidence is often understated. A chance encounter, a solution that appears out of nowhere, a sudden clarity that the path you sought has been waiting for you all along. The most striking part of Neville's teaching is its immediacy. The door swings open the moment you feel the truth of your desire internally. It is simple, yet deceptively so. One moment, the world seems fixed. The next, an internal alignment, a feeling, a belief, begins to reweave reality quietly around you. It is in these first moments, when imagination meets feeling without interference from doubt, that the instantaneous nature of manifestation reveals itself. And so, the doors open. Just beyond it, the mind begins to taste the subtle power of assumption, sensing that reality bends in response to belief, that something as simple as feeling and imagining can quietly, yet profoundly, change everything. Living in the end. Stepping through imagination's door is one thing, living there is another. Neville Goddard called it living in the end. It is the practice of dwelling fully in the feeling of your wish, already fulfilled, as if the desired reality has arrived. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. To do this is to align thought, emotion, and action, creating a resonance that life cannot ignore. It starts quietly. Perhaps you sit with your eyes closed, envisioning a scene in which your desire has already come true. You see it, but more importantly, you feel it. The body relaxes, the heart softens, and a subtle inner certainty replaces the habitual tension of wanting. Goddard insisted that the act of living in the end is not a mental trick or fantasy. It is a deliberate reorientation of consciousness, a choice to inhabit a higher, more aligned state. The biblical parable of faith as a mustard seed offers a fitting metaphor. A tiny seed, when placed in fertile soil, grows into a tree of unexpected magnitude. So too, a small but consistent assumption of your fulfilled desire can expand into reality far beyond initial expectation. The mustard seed of belief need not be grand or overwhelming. It only needs to be genuine. It is the quality of conviction, not its size, that commands the unseen forces of creation. Early 20th century mystics explored similar terrain. They discovered that creative visualization, seeing, feeling, and mentally inhabiting a desired outcome often triggered tangible changes in life circumstances. Experiments were informal, personal, and sometimes anecdotal, but the patterns were striking. Those who mastered the ability to assume the end consistently reported events shifting in synchrony with their inner state. Coincidences multiplied. Opportunities appeared unexpectedly. The outer world began to echo the inner reality. The act of living in the end reshapes consciousness subtly but profoundly. It is not about faking happiness or forcing optimism. It is about choosing a mental and emotional posture that signals completion rather than lack. When the mind holds this state persistently, perception itself begins to change. Obstacles no longer loom as insurmountable. Others respond differently to you. Opportunities present themselves, and choices that once seemed difficult become natural. The world bends, not because it is compelled, but because your inner life has become magnetic. Doubt, however, is a shadow that lingers. Even brief moments of disbelief can weaken the effect of living in the end. Goddard warned that attention must remain steady. You do not merely imagine a scene and walk away, you inhabit it. Every gesture, every thought, every subtle emotional cue should echo the reality you wish to experience. This is a discipline that blends focus with surrender. You do not push the universe, you invite it, and you carry the inner certainty that what you imagine is already yours. Living in the end also reshapes behavior. Subtle choices, once unnoticed, now reflect the assumption that your desire is fulfilled. You walk differently, speak differently, and act with a quiet confidence that shifts outcomes naturally. It is a feedback loop. The internal state informs action. Action reinforces feeling, and feeling deepens the internal state. The mind-body alignment becomes a bridge to the external world, a subtle but potent method of manifestation. Consider a small, ordinary moment. You imagine receiving a letter or a phone call or an opportunity you deeply desire. You feel the excitement as though it has already arrived. You carry that feeling into the day. Soon, circumstances conspire to deliver evidence that the imagined reality is no longer fiction. The sequence often surprises those who have only considered manifestation as distant or slow. Living in the end is the instantaneous part. The outer world follows with a rhythm that feels almost magical. This practice does not require elaborate rituals or complex systems. It is not about memorizing steps or adhering to dogma. It is about the quality of attention and the willingness to believe inwardly before the world shows it outwardly. Living in the end is a gentle, persistent insistence on alignment, a quiet mastery of imagination and feeling. And once this posture is understood and embraced, the next layer of manifestation, the subtle currents and signs that confirm your alignment, becomes unmistakable. As the inner state deepens, awareness begins to pick up the first whispers of reality shifting in response, preparing the mind to notice the subtle, immediate signals of manifestation that follow. Feeling is the secret. The mind can imagine endlessly, but without feeling, imagination often drifts like smoke, visible, alluring, yet without weight. Neville Goddard taught that feeling is the secret, the engine that propels imagination into reality. It is not enough to see a scene in the mind's eye. You must feel it as if it already exists. Joy, relief, excitement, even quiet contentment. These emotions impress the subconscious, creating a fertile ground where manifestation can sprout instantly. William James, the philosopher and psychologist, observed that belief is not a passive state. Faith, when genuinely felt, produces tangible effects in behavior and perception. Our minds are not neutral observers, they are active participants. When you align thought with feeling, you are effectively instructing your subconscious. The outer world listens because it is built upon the patterns already living within you. Emotion is the bridge, connecting imagination to action, turning abstract ideas into lived experience. The experience begins subtly. You might imagine a desired conversation with someone, a letter arriving, or a moment of success, and then you feel the relief, the gratitude, the quiet thrill of knowing it is already yours. That feeling resonates through the body, through posture and breath, subtly altering how you inhabit the world. In Vedantic terms, it is a recognition of Maya shifting, illusion bending to the shape of your inner certainty. The world outside remains the same, yet perception reveals a new pattern, one aligned with your internal truth. Kundalini energy, in the esoteric sense, flows when mind and feeling align. It is not dramatic, not explosive, but a gentle stirring, a vibration that signals readiness. This is the subtle force Neville often hinted at without naming it. When your imagination and emotion fuse, you activate a current within, almost electric, that moves beyond thought. It whispers that what you imagine is already being realized, even before the world reflects it. Even small, consistent experiences of feeling can transform reality. One moment of genuine gratitude for something imagined can shift days, even weeks, in ways you could not anticipate. Goddard emphasized that the quality of the feeling matters more than the quantity of thought. You do not need to labor over visualization for hours. You need depth, sincerity, and a willingness to inhabit the sensation fully. The subconscious responds to sincerity. It recognizes authenticity instantly. Shadow and doubt linger, of course. A fleeting question, "Am I really worthy?" can unsettle the current. Yet even this resistance can be observed without judgment, acknowledged, and gently returned to the feeling of fulfillment. It is not suppression, but redirection. The mind learns to trust the emotional signal, to prioritize the felt reality over the evidence of the senses. In this way, manifestation is not an external negotiation but an internal alignment, a tuning of the inner instruments until the world outside naturally harmonizes. Feeling also informs action. When the inner state is congruent with desire, choices emerge naturally. You speak differently, you notice opportunities, your intuition sharpens. The external world appears to respond immediately, as though it were waiting for your internal approval. These are not coincidences. They are the evidence of alignment. Each subtle ripple confirms that feeling is the invisible hand guiding creation, quietly and persistently, even before thought catches up. Consider a single imagined moment again. You feel the relief of receiving good news. You carry it in your chest, in your gestures, in the tiny movements of your day. The world, reflecting the subconscious impression, arranges circumstances that match. And yet the process is gentle, almost imperceptible. It is not flashy, not dramatic, but profound. The emotional imprint, once deeply felt, catalyzes immediate response, even before the mind fully processes the mechanics. The secret, then, is not technique alone, but alchemy. Imagination, emotion, and subtle energy converging. The mind becomes a vessel, the feeling a key, and the world an echo chamber of what has been internally accepted as real. Once this mechanism is sensed, a natural curiosity arises. Why does doubt still interrupt for some, and how can this invisible current be trusted without hesitation? Once feeling takes the lead, the next question becomes clear. How does the subconscious, the silent witness, take this energy and translate it into the unmistakable signs that a manifestation is already underway? The subconscious bridge. Feeling alone is powerful, but without a channel it can float, unanchored. The subconscious mind is that channel, this bridge connecting imagination and reality. Neville Goddard described it as a silent theatre, always receptive, always recording. Every assumption, every deeply felt scene is impressed upon this inner stage, and the world outside, subtle yet faithful, begins to respond. The process is not linear. It is a ripple, instantaneous yet often invisible at first, like a pebble dropped into still water. Experiments in psychology reveal the mechanics in their own language. Studies on subconscious priming show that subtle cues influence behavior and perception far beyond conscious awareness. A fleeting thought or imagined scenario can prime the mind to notice opportunities, make choices, and respond in ways consistent with that internal pattern. What is rehearsed internally shapes external action, often before conscious decision catches up. The mind's quiet undercurrents are always at work, translating inner energy into outer outcomes. Consider the Hermetic principle. As within, so without. What resides in the depths of consciousness inevitably reflects in the world around us. It is not a metaphor. It is a law of alignment. If the inner theatre is occupied by doubt, the world mirrors hesitation. If it is inhabited by certainty and vivid feeling, the external environment bends toward confirmation. The bridge exists in this silent space between thought and experience, and every internal assumption lays a plank upon it. Repetition matters. One vivid assumption may flutter briefly like a candle in the wind, but persistent, consistent occupation of the desired scene strengthens the impression. It becomes encoded, not as a fantasy, but as a living, functional template. Neville emphasized that the subconscious does not judge or critique. It accepts whatever is offered with sincerity. The outer world then follows the blueprint. It rearranges circumstances to fit the new internal reality, often more quickly than expected. The process can be subtle. A chance encounter, a sudden idea, a conversation unfolding exactly as imagined. These are whispers from the bridge, gentle confirmations that the subconscious is translating internal conviction into material expression. The external world seems to respond instantaneously, though the mechanism remains hidden from the casual eye. It is the silent artistry of alignment, and feeling is the paintbrush that colours the canvas. Yet, awareness of the mechanism introduces tension. Why do some manifestations fail despite repeated effort? The bridge is always sensitive to interference. Conflicting assumptions, unresolved doubts, and habitual skepticism act like cracks in the span. The subconscious cannot distinguish between a desired reality, imagined with conviction, and the same scenario overshadowed by fear. When the inner theatre is divided, the external world mirrors that division. Manifestation slows or appears inconsistent, not because the method is flawed, but because the bridge is obstructed. Imagine your subconscious as a river. The current is steady and potent, but debris, old beliefs, anxieties, fragmented attention can disrupt flow. Cleaning the river requires vigilance and gentle attention, not force. Revisiting assumptions, feeling them fully, and reinforcing the scene with emotional conviction strengthen the connection. The moment the current runs unobstructed, even subtle internal shifts ripple outward and are mirrored by life itself. This is why Goddard emphasized persistence and clarity. Feeling alone is not enough. The impression must settle deeply. Daily attention to the inner theatre, revisiting the scene with renewed vitality, reinforces the bridge. The subconscious then becomes a collaborator, translating private conviction into public reality. Each impression, each moment of genuine assumption, strengthens the pathway between inner and outer worlds. A bridge stands there, silent, yet vibrant, Every scene, felt and assumed, carries energy that cannot be ignored, a ripple that travels from mind to world almost instantly. Yet even as the current moves, questions remain. Why does resistance linger? And why do some desires falter despite clear intent? These hidden obstacles lead naturally into the next layer, the inner resistance that shadows every act of creation. Overcoming inner resistance. Resistance is subtle. It creeps in like a shadow across the mind, quiet but persistent. Self-doubt, limiting beliefs, old fears, these are the obstacles that prevent the instantaneous results Neville Goddard described. You may imagine your desire clearly, feel it vividly, yet still sense a hesitation that stalls the manifestation. This is the inner work, the shadow labour that must accompany faith and imagination. The African concept of Sankofa teaches that the past is not a burden but a guide. Go back and fetch it, the proverb says, retrieving lessons from previous beliefs to move forward with clarity. Inner resistance often comes from unexamined assumptions stored deep within consciousness. Perhaps childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, or past failures whisper that fulfillment is impossible. By retrieving and understanding these shadows, you do not fight them. You integrate them. You learn, adjust, and redirect energy toward the end you wish to inhabit. Fear often wears many masks. One may call it hesitation, another self-criticism, another impatience. Imagine a farmer who longs for a bountiful harvest, but hesitates to plant because past seasons failed. He remembers the dry fields, the frost, the storms, yet he takes one step. He plants again, trusting that preparation and timing will bear fruit. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the soil begins to yield. Fear remains, but action aligned with faith produces results. Inner resistance operates similarly. It is often the echo of past disappointments, waiting to be met with courage and consistency. Goddard's method does not deny resistance, it works with it. The key is to continue assuming the feeling of the fulfilled desire despite the shadow murmurs. When doubt arises, acknowledge it without surrendering. Return to the inner scene, fully alive with emotion, as if the outcome is already certain. Repetition impresses this assumption onto the subconscious, gradually dissolving the invisible walls that block manifestation. The subconscious does not resist sincerity. It absorbs persistence and converts it into alignment. Obstacles may feel like concrete barriers, but they are more like waves on the surface of a deep river. The river itself, the subconscious current, flows steadily beneath. Each encounter with fear or self-doubt is an opportunity to practice faith, to reinforce the end state. The process is gentle yet rigorous, a dialogue rather than a confrontation. One does not annihilate resistance. One acknowledges it, learns from it, and continues to live in the end. Patterns of resistance often hide in repetition. Certain fears, old assumptions, or conditioned limitations resurface until fully processed. Sankofa reminds us that history is a teacher, not a jailer. By revisiting these patterns consciously, imagining the desired reality as already complete, and feeling its reality, the inner bridge clears. Obstacles do not vanish overnight, but their power diminishes, replaced by the subtle momentum of aligned thought, emotion, and expectation. Consider how small victories reinforce courage. A single imaginative act, fully felt, can shift confidence. One day, the farmer trusts the soil, plants the seeds, and the harvest grows richer than ever expected. Inner resistance does not disappear magically. It softens as repeated assumptions cultivate new pathways in the mind. Neville's insistence on persistence is the key, returning to the inner theatre again and again, feeling fulfillment as if it already exists until doubt loses its grip. What often appears as practicality or realism is actually resistance in disguise. A voice may whisper, "You're being unrealistic," yet realism is not always truth. Faith, as Goddard and many mystics emphasize, is not blind but informed by the imagination's subtle wisdom. The moment you step beyond fear, even slightly, the current of your inner assumption carries outward effects, rearranging circumstances with an almost imperceptible, instantaneous rhythm. This is the alchemy of inner work, confronting the shadow, learning from past beliefs, and persistently returning to the imagined end. Every block navigated, every fear acknowledged, strengthens the bridge between imagination and manifestation. The mind grows increasingly receptive, the heart increasingly certain, and the world begins to echo the internal alignment in ways that feel immediate. The moment resistance softens and persistence strengthens, the world begins to whisper, signs and synchronicities that quietly affirm manifestation is in motion. Signs of instant manifestation. Manifestation rarely announces itself with fanfare. Often it begins as a whisper, a coincidence, a fleeting thought, a subtle shift in perception. After clearing resistance and aligning with the end, these small signals become the first evidence that imagination has moved through the subconscious bridge into the external world. They are almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable once you know what to look for. Edgar Cayce, the mystic often called the sleeping prophet, described precognition as a quiet awareness that events were already forming before the conscious mind recognized them. A sudden insight, a dream, a fleeting hunch. These are the soft echoes of reality adjusting to internal. Alignment. Goddard's students reported similar experiences, a letter arriving unexpectedly, a meeting arranged without planning, or opportunities appearing as if by design. Subtlety is the signature of instant manifestation. Look closely at daily life. A stranger smiles at just the right moment. You find a book or article that contains precisely the advice you were silently seeking. A conversation unfolds in a way that confirms your imagined scenario. These are not random occurrences. They are the universe's way of reflecting your inner assumption. When you notice and trust these signs, the bridge between imagination and reality strengthens, creating an almost effortless rhythm of alignment. Early accounts of Goddard's students provide striking examples. One student vividly imagined receiving a promotion and felt the joy of accomplishment in advance. Within days, the opportunity arose unexpectedly. Another held the feeling of a long-desired relationship, and the synchronicities that followed seemed uncanny to everyone observing. These reports, repeated across decades, show that once resistance is addressed and feeling is applied, manifestation often operates with immediate precision. The signs are sometimes symbolic rather than literal. A colour, a word, a recurring number may appear, subtly confirming the trajectory of your assumption. These cues function like a compass, pointing toward the unfolding reality you have imagined. They are small, almost playful gestures from life, yet deeply significant. Attention to these details develops trust in the process and builds confidence that the inner theatre truly governs the outer stage. The resonance of these signs is deeply personal, impossible for others to quantify. A song that suddenly plays on the radio, a phrase repeated in conversation, or an image in a dream may feel trivial to an outsider, but to you it vibrates with meaning. Your subconscious is communicating in a language of symbols tailored uniquely to your experiences and desires. Learning to recognize and interpret these personal markers amplifies the speed and clarity of manifestation, turning everyday life into a continuous dialogue with the creative force within. You may notice shifts in perception even before external confirmation. Situations begin to feel different, obstacles seem less threatening, and previously ignored options become clear. It is as if your senses are adjusting to a new frequency, attuning to the reality that already exists in your imagination. The world itself has not changed dramatically, but your perception has. And in that perception, the manifestation begins to reveal itself. Even minor coincidences carry weight. A parking spot opens just when needed, a helpful stranger appears at the perfect moment, or a conversation unexpectedly aligns with your goals. Goddard called these signs, subtle indicators that the inner assumption has impressed upon the subconscious and is now influencing circumstances. Recognizing these moments is both confirmation and encouragement, proof that the inner work of imagination and feeling has created a tangible ripple in life. The surprising ease of manifestation is what makes it feel magical, as it often bypasses the effort we assume is necessary. To the untrained eye, it seems coincidental or mysterious, yet the mechanism is logical when understood. A fully assumed scene, impressed upon the subconscious through feeling, draws events into harmony with that inner reality. Magic and logic merge in this process, revealing that the laws of mind are as precise as any law of nature, though they operate in ways invisible to most observers. Awareness of these signs shifts perception further. Trust grows, patience deepens, and attention naturally gravitates toward alignment rather than doubt. Every subtle confirmation reinforces the practice of living in the end and feeling the reality of the desire. With each observation, the inner bridge strengthens, and manifestation becomes increasingly seamless, often occurring before conscious expectation fully arrives. The first whispers of reality begin to appear, drawing attention toward a deeper principle, the illusion of time itself, and how Goddard's method makes the end exist fully now, even before circumstances catch up. The illusion of time. Time feels linear. One moment follows another, like beads on a string, and the mind accepts this sequence as absolute. Yet Neville Goddard challenged this assumption. He suggested that the past, present, and future are not fixed lanes, but aspects of consciousness. When you imagine the end now fully and vividly, you collapse the barriers that usually separate what has yet to occur from what exists already in perception. Manifestation, in this view, is not waiting. It is immediate. Henry Bergson, the philosopher of time, spoke of subjective experience as fluid rather than measured. Clock time is one thing, lived time is another. The imagination operates in this subjective dimension. When you feel the reality of your desire, you occupy a present that contains the future as already fulfilled. The subconscious does not compute with minutes or hours. It responds to what you accept internally as real, and in doing so, the external world rearranges to match. This principle is echoed in Taoist thought through the idea of wu wei, timeless action. Effortless creation occurs when one aligns with the natural flow instead of forcing outcomes. Imagining the end now is a form of wu wei. You do not push reality into existence. You allow it to emerge through alignment of mind, feeling, and assumption. The more completely you inhabit this state, the less the illusion of waiting persists, and the more immediate the unfolding seems. Even the simplest imagined scene carries temporal potency. You might picture receiving a call, feeling the relief and joy as if it were happening now. The subconscious records not that it will happen, but that it is happening. In that moment, past doubts, present circumstances, and future possibilities converge. The ripple moves in all directions. You cannot see every path it touches, but you can trust the pattern is forming, and often more quickly than you expected. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagined and experienced reality. It responds to conviction and consistency. Each fully felt scene sets into motion countless micro-adjustments, thoughts, decisions, perceptions, that align circumstances with the assumed end. Small, seemingly unrelated events begin to converge. A conversation takes a turn, an idea emerges at just the right moment, an opportunity appears out of nowhere. These micro-ripples accumulate, and suddenly what was imagined feels inevitable, as if time itself has folded to bring the desire into existence. Resistance to this concept arises naturally. The mind clings to linear causality because it is familiar. We measure progress by steps, achievements, or calendar dates. Goddard's method asks for a leap, to assume the end now, to feel it fully, and to trust that the invisible currents of consciousness will orchestrate circumstances beyond temporal constraint. It is a paradox. Action without forcing, movement without waiting, creation without delay. Subtle confirmations appear when the illusion of time is understood. A desired event might unfold more quickly than logic predicts. Opportunities arrive seemingly early. Coincidences converge, and perception shifts so that delays vanish. The mind begins to perceive a present that is larger than the usual tick of the clock, one in which desires exist as realities awaiting acknowledgement, rather than as future possibilities to be earned. There is a rhythm to this practice, a cadence of assumption and feeling. Each time you dwell in the end, you reinforce a new temporal logic within consciousness. Past limitations, remembered failures, and anticipated obstacles lose influence because the internal narrative now situates fulfillment in the present. The external world, sensitive to this internal reorientation, responds with evidence that seems instantaneous, yet is the natural consequence of collapsed time. The mind gradually learns a new relationship with chronology. You notice that impatience diminishes, expectation becomes trust, and the unfolding of life accelerates in alignment with your inner state. What once seemed like waiting becomes participation. Manifestation is no longer a distant goal, but a lived present, sensed and confirmed by subtle signs and shifting circumstances. Having grasped this understanding, the final step emerges naturally, embodying the process fully, becoming the living expression of creation itself, and experiencing reality not as a series of events, but as a continuous reflection of internal alignment. Becoming the living miracle. Creation is not a distant event. It is a lived experience, quietly humming beneath the surface of perception. Neville Goddard often reminded his students that the world mirrors consciousness. Reality is a canvas for imagination, and feeling is the brushstroke that brings the vision to life. When imagination, emotion, and subconscious alignment converge, the outer world becomes a reflection of the inner state. You begin to notice that every moment, every encounter, carries a subtle echo of your own assumptions. Consider the mystical parable of the student who travelled far seeking a master, desperate for knowledge and guidance. Along the way, he encountered teachers, texts, and challenges, yet the final revelation came suddenly. He was the teacher, all along. This is the essence of becoming a living miracle. The power you have sought externally is not elsewhere. It has always been present within you, waiting to be recognized and embodied. Neville's method is not about influence or control over others. It is the awakening to the fact that your inner reality shapes your world effortlessly, once fully assumed. Little acts of imagination and feeling, practiced consistently, carry immense power to transform. One evening, a student might close their eyes and feel the reality of a fulfilled desire, fully inhabiting the scene. The subconscious registers the conviction, reinforcing pathways of alignment, while subtle signs appear in daily life. A conversation unfolds unexpectedly, a new opportunity presents itself, a pattern shifts, all confirming that inner certainty has manifested externally. Neville's anecdotes are full of such moments. A student imagining a financial opportunity that materializes the next day, or a relationship forming almost overnight after persistent assumption of its reality. The embodiment of this inner state extends beyond deliberate imagination. Your posture, tone of voice, and even the small gestures of daily life begin to resonate with the reality you assume. People respond differently around you, opportunities emerge more fluidly, and ordinary moments carry a quiet significance. It is as if your internal certainty emits a frequency that organizes circumstances effortlessly, drawing events into harmony with the state you inhabit, long before conscious recognition catches up. Shadow and doubt remain companions, yet their influence diminishes as the practice becomes habitual. Every time you return to the feeling of fulfillment, you reinforce the bridge between imagination and reality. Resistance softens, micro-ripples accumulate, and life begins to move in harmony with your assumed end. You notice how circumstances rearrange themselves naturally, without struggle or effort, almost as if the universe is quietly yielding to your inner state. Becoming a living miracle is as much about perception as it is about external change. You begin to sense the invisible currents, noticing synchronicities, coincidences, and subtle confirmations with increasing clarity. Life itself becomes a teacher, reflecting the quality of attention and feeling you bring to each moment. The mystical and the mundane intertwine seamlessly. A traffic light, a conversation, a chance encounter. They all whisper the truth of your inner assumption, and you start to live in that quiet confirmation continuously. Neville emphasized the immediacy of this method. There is no need to wait for external validation, no necessity for laborious effort. What is required is persistence, imagination, and feeling fully inhabited. The student becomes aware that the external world is neither resistant nor indifferent. It simply mirrors the inner alignment. To embody this fully is to dissolve the separation between desire and reality. You live as if creation itself is not an act to be performed, but a state to be inhabited. Daily miracles, quiet and subtle, start to surround you. Doors open when attention and feeling align. Events coincide in ways that defy casual explanation. And yet, the process is not mysterious. It is logical once understood. Each inner assumption, each fully felt scene, imprints upon the subconscious, which orchestrates the external world in harmony with your state. The miraculous is natural, because it is the inevitable outcome of internal coherence, of thought and feeling moving in synchronized rhythm. By fully embodying this practice, the subtle rhythm of creation continues to unfold around you, inviting the next discovery to appear in ways you cannot yet imagine. Thanks for watching. If you felt inspired, hit subscribe and join the journey, and share your experiences with manifestation in the comments below.